cut off. Are you going to sit back a little?
Yep. Hi. So we are loud, live, and in color today. Welcome, guys. Thank you for coming to view our show today. We have a very special guest from Canada. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your name, and a little bit about what you do.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janelle Benjamin. I am the founder and CEO of All Things Equitable. It is a management consulting firm in the Toronto area that assists organizations to ensure equitable workplaces.
Great. So, I guess a little bit, a couple questions that we have, just a little couple, not too into detail about a couple things. So, what kind of made you wanted to start this company? You know, a little bit, kind of going into, what inspired you mostly?
So, what inspired me mostly, I would definitely say, is the George Floyd killing. Um, I felt at that time that I definitely need to get into this space and contribute to this movement in a meaningful and impactful way. Of course, using the skills that I had acquired over the bulk of my career, I just thought, I was unemployed. So I thought, why am I sitting around trying to get a job when I've got the skills, I've got the talent, I've got what it takes and the know-how to contribute and get into my own. So yeah, it was largely George Floyd. And actually, it was the day after George Floyd. It was really Amy Cooper that just like lit a fire under me. Amy Cooper, for those who don't know, is the white dog walker. She's a Canadian woman, actually, like myself, who was walking her dog in Central Park and insisted that a black gentleman, be removed from the park, ultimately calling the police on him and lying about, what was going on between the two of them in the park. So that lit a fire under me more so than even the George Floyd killing, precisely because I've had it. I've had it with the quote unquote workplace Karen who's used her privilege and her white power to have people like myself removed from places where we should belong. So, coupled with George Floyd's murder, it's just like, okay, enough is enough. I'm done with trying to work for someone. I'm going to do this for myself, and I'm not going to allow anybody else to suggest that I don't have what it takes or that I don't belong where I am when I know that I've got the leadership competencies to do this work. And so I'm going to just do it for myself, and to hell with what everybody else thinks about me. So that's why.
So I commend you for stepping into your power and not letting anybody take that away from you. I think you displaying that type of confidence and giving Black women a voice and a power and giving them something to look forward to is commendable, because we do live in a society now where a lot of marginalized people, especially Black women, are not heard. They don't have voices. And for you to be as strong as you are and take it to the next level, the next notch, and actually get out there and do it and be successful is a very good accomplishment. So,
Thank you so much.
I'm proud of you for stepping into your power and not letting anybody take your voice away, and not caring, and creating space for not just yourself, but for people who look like you as well in these marginalized groups. So,
I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot. It's just it's definitely a scary thing to do. It's a risky thing to do. It's I don't view myself as an entrepreneur. I never have. I never saw myself working for myself. We're all socialized and pretty well conditioned to just go to school, get a job, not go to school, create a job. And so I fell into that trap as well. So it is quite a different experience for me, and exciting to be, stepping into my own power, as you say, and resting on my own laurels. But it's exciting and it's scary at the same time. But I appreciate, you saying that to me.
Can you let us into your world a little bit? What is sort of a day in the life of someone who runs their own business, particularly with diversity and inclusion? the kinds of organizations or companies that might hire you to do consultancy work? Just kind of, if we could get a little glimpse into, and for those of us who aspire to perhaps be our own bosses one day, any sort of insights that you've gained throughout this process?
Wow, that's a huge question, Chandra, because it's so, I have to say, every single day is different, but every single day is a rush, like a full on rush. To do this work, and it's basically you live it, you eat it, you breathe it, you sleep it, you don't sleep. Um,
It's
I
true.
often don't sleep. I get up in the middle of the night, my ideas are churning, and I'm, pulling out my cell phone and writing down notes. I'm creating blogs at 3 a.m. Um, I'm meeting with clients and stakeholders pretty much for most of the day. There's lots of Zoom chats and things like that right now that everybody wants to get a little piece of your time for, and you want to have those meetings, right? So that people know that you're in this space and they understand what you can do and what your offerings are. So I mean, every single day it's like full tilt. It's been that way for like 3 months since I launched the business. Um, and I'm hoping to kind of slow that pace down in the new year and to do a little bit more self-care because that's not been a priority. But what can I say? I mean, when you're working for yourself, and I don't think it's limited to DEI work. I think any type of entrepreneur is probably not sleeping very much. Especially in this environment in which we do have to kind of transform and change our way of working. I My days, like, you're doing everything from marketing and communications to profession, to stakeholder meetings and engagement, to financial management and human resource management, creating job postings, and I'm creating the online content. You've got to get yourself out there. So there's the social media engagement and strategies around that. And of course, when proposals out there in the environment, I've got to bid and pitch and interview to get the work. So it's tons and tons and tons of that, plus actually doing the work. So you get the contracts, you get the gig, and then you definitely have to demonstrate what it is that you're able to do for organizations. And so it's very busy. It's very rewarding. You have to say that it does feel quite good. Um, and just relying on myself, believing in myself, and waiting for the dollars to kind of roll in to match. So I would encourage anybody that if they feel that they have the skills, the talent, the know-how, the passion, for any endeavor, to just really believe in yourself and go for it. There's nothing like it. You will be working extremely hard because you are every single department in every major corporation that you can think of, from communications to finance and administration and operations, and even like the basic calendar management and scheduling. I'm admin, like I'm a one woman show, plus I've got kids, right? So
Wow.
it's a
Amazing.
full-time, yeah, it's a full-time job for sure. But anybody can do it if you believe in what you're doing enough, and you put your passion and your heart and soul into it. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
I
You
would,
mentioned self-care. I'm sorry. Sorry,
yeah.
one moment, Stevie.
Yes,
I
okay.
wanted to touch on the
Look
self-care
here.
because
Yeah.
she did mention that. And that's something that we've been wanting to focus on throughout the series. But this work, as you know, requires us to also take care of ourselves so that we can help, serve others. And so what does that look like for you? What would that look like? Optimum level of self-care in your life?
Oh my God, optimum level of self-care is me like working out every single day. I absolutely love to work out, but I absolutely have not worked out in a very long time.
What?
Yeah.
Seriously, optimal self-care is me like getting to the gym when it's open, enjoying like an hour and a half workout, spawing sometimes, and a little bit of prayer, and all of that goes with just kind of having that like woosah moment to kind of calm down, and just spending time with family and friends, and meeting for a nice drink at a restaurant. Like, all of that is part of who I am and what I enjoy doing, but I can't do any of that. So it's like all guns ablaze, and I'm going full force into this work. All guns blazing, I think is the expression. But yeah, I mean, if I could, yoga and meditate and
Yeah.
read books even. Oh my God,
Sure.
like to
For
just
pleasure.
sit
Yeah.
and open a book and read for pleasure would be a delight. But I mean, none of that has
Yeah.
happened. I mean, I can't blame it all on the business. A lot of this happened just because of a result of motherhood and wifedom. Like, those things take
Yeah.
a toll on your ability to care for self, right? There's obligations of the family from
Sure.
cooking and cleaning, and of course now my son is learning at home, so there's all of that goes into taking away from me prioritizing myself. So
Mm-hmm.
ultimate goals for 2021 would be the ability to kind of slow down,
Yeah.
prioritize myself, and do the things that make me happy.
That's great. Yeah. I sort of, um, well, with the self-care for me, it's tricky because I'm unemployed. I've been unemployed 5 months. I know I'm, in the same boat with a lot of people right now. And so
Mhm.
sometimes there's not even motivation to, you know, do the basics, get myself up and, take a shower and wash my face. And so I'm actually finding that even some of the basic things that the work routine, forced upon me, now I'm having to really dig deep. And, so actually the podcast has helped a lot because you are forced to, put yourself together a bit and face people and have conversations. So you do kind of go into this little low level depression. It's a combination of the unemployment with the pandemic, I think. Those two whammies are really, take their toll sometimes. So we're going to
For
continue to
sure.
talk about it and emphasize it and help others get through this time as well, because it can be, for me, there's no other adult in the house. I don't have, adult conversations very often. So this actually is quite therapeutic to even be having an adult conversation, seeing another adult face. Um, so
No,
tell
I
us a little
totally
bit about,
get it. And I was going to say, I totally get it. And mental health is so important to diversity, equity, and inclusion work, right? And we preach it for others,
yeah,
right? For other organizations to take stock of the mental health of their employees. But we also have to make sure that we are living it, breathing it. Going for the daily walk if that's what we enjoy, or the jog in the morning. Whatever it is that we preach, we do have to absolutely need to find the time and the space to practice it. And you're right, like for moms, I mean, no, no this to dads or whatever, but for moms, especially single moms, it's so tough, right? The things
yeah,
that we enjoy as women to do, just like you said, washing our face and combing our hair with and putting on like good creams,
yeah,
like
yeah,
not using the body lotion to like moisturize, like spending the time to paint our nails and just like little things.
yeah. That's funny
It's
you
so
mentioned
important
nails
to make.
because I have a cousin who kind of hit the big time, and he's getting manicures and pedicures now, and I'm thinking I'm really envious of that. Your ability to
Yeah.
do that, and but it's really prioritizing yourself. That's what it's all about. So it doesn't, there are ways to make it not hopefully cost a lot of money, but certainly even just like you said, taking a walk in nature and or music. Music has been so therapeutic, and so I've been listening to a lot of that and dancing and singing around the house, keep the energy
That,
levels up. Uh,
that's all.
so you inspired me. I certainly saw what you were doing in terms of your podcast and how successful it was, and the interesting conversations that you were having with people. And so I want to say thank you for inspiring me to also do that kind of a thing. And if you could tell us a little bit about the evolution of your podcast.
Sure. So, for those who don't know, it's called White and Woke at Work. It is a YouTube series where I have face to face conversations over Zoom with individuals that I found largely over LinkedIn platform who I would consider, for the most part, white and certainly more woke than most, right? People who I've noted are in this environment championing the movement for social justice, social racial equity. They are pretty much a voice for the voiceless, and they're speaking on behalf of of themselves, but the marginalized, historically marginalized, the disenfranchised in society, and advocating for their full inclusion. And so I've decided to profile these individuals who are largely anti-racist, and just discuss the things that they are doing in their spheres of influence, largely in the workplace, but also at home and in their personal lives, to make things better for the Black community. And they're doing amazing things. The point of the series really is to chronicle each person's individual journey and awakening at the point at which they woke up to this. From people, it was George Floyd. Some people it was Ahmaud Arbery. People it was the first civil rights movement. Some of the guests are where they've lived through that first civil rights movement. For others, it's just part and parcel of who they are, right? To be justice minded and human rights focused has been kind of instilled since birth, like yourself, Chandra. So it's a mixed bag. The demographic ranges, like there's millennials all the way up to retirees. There are people from Canada, the United States. There are, of course, men and women. There are lesbians and trans and straight, and like the full spectrum is part of the show. And so I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying profiling each person. And I think what's awesome is that if people watch it, they can find someone to identify with. The stories are so unique and different, and of course personal, and I think inspiring to exactly to know the point in which if I'm white, I could do this too, right? They look like me, they walk and talk and think like me, they had family upbringings like I did, and if they can be outspoken, perhaps I could too. So it's really meant to inspire a new cohort of anti-racists. That's really the purpose. It wasn't really to give myself any shine. If I could just inspire one person to pick up this mantle and say, you know what, I can do it too. Identify with Chandra, or identify with Phil or Maya or whomever. See themselves reflected and decide that they could also do something on behalf of the Black community. I think that was my ultimate goal. So that's the series. I hope everybody would tune in and subscribe to the show. And episodes are released every Thursday.
Thank you for doing that. Sometimes you might get pushback about highlighting white allies. White allies aren't necessarily always the most popular topic, and there is some attempt to erase the history of white allyship, and I think that's regrettable. So it's nice to offer up models of what it could be, what it could look like to be an anti-racist white person, and also to remind us that anti-racist activism is happening all over the globe. It's not just a US thing. We tend to get, sucked into our little vortex here in this country, and especially in light of the recent events that have taken place. But it's important to understand that, there's anti-Black racism all over the world, and there are people who are fighting against it all over the world. And sometimes, Americans will forget that. So this is a global movement, and there's no turning back. I know that it can feel like, right, 2 steps forward, 1 step back a lot of the time, but that's still progress. So I see movement forward. I think there's no coincidence that on the day that Georgia turned blue, we had also the incident at the Capitol happen, and so I wanted to ask you about that. What, from your vantage point, what is that looking like from Canada?
Yeah,
what's happening here?
Definitely.
Well, I mean, I guess it's twofold, because I've heard remarks from some people kind of distancing ourselves and saying, oh my God, like, how terrible that's happening in the United States. But at the same time, we did have our own pro-Trump supporter demonstrations taking place down a major street called Yonge Street in Toronto as well. Yeah, your face is stunned, but
yeah, they can't even vote for him.
Right. We have no voting power, but yet, we've got quote unquote Trump supporters in our midst. And so for me, what does that look like? I mean, it's frightening, horribly frightening. What I saw taking place at the Capitol, truly, I was aghast and I had no words for it. I don't think I posted that day or maybe even the next day. And I just, I couldn't, I couldn't put into words what I was feeling. So I just chose to stay off of social media because I didn't want to say the wrong thing or the regrettable things, the thing that I would, hate to look back at my commentary and see and feel.
I doubt you
Um,
would. I doubt you would regret anything that you write, but I can understand the sentiment. Yeah.
yeah, it was horrifying. I mean, so many people are focusing on, I don't know. I honestly, what I feel, um, the most stunned by was the Confederate flag, like going through, the Capitol. People were talking about the guys in the costume, and I was really overwhelmed with emotion at the fact that there was an individual, sitting in the office of, I believe it was the vice president. I felt overwhelmed with emotion that your personal space could be violated in such a way. Like, I don't know if anybody else has ever been robbed or attacked or assaulted or violated in any way, but I felt the violation almost on a personal level because I have been pickpocketed. I know what it is for somebody to have rifled through your things. Um, and just to know that somebody was in your office. I know it's our workplace where, it largely belongs to the building and to the entity and the company that we work for. But we spend so much of our day in our office space. We personalize it, right?
Sure.
So that for me was really jarring to think that you could have an office space and an interloper could just come in and sit down and put their feet up on your desk and rifle through your things and leave notes for you that are meant to terrorize you. Like, I don't know. The whole thing was just totally demystifying, but then not, right? Because I also found myself feeling like, you know, why are people shocked? Why are people stunned? This is so in character with, you know, the history of colonialism and the entitlement and the taking that comes with white power and privilege and supremacy, right? So it was kind of this weird, okay, this is normal, but at the same time, this is so abhorrent and abnormal because you've got, the good old boys running through the US Capitol and basically um, saying that, the type of government that is in place in the United States isn't what they want. So I don't know. I'm still really mixed about it. I'm sure I'm babbling right now because I'm still very mixed about it. Um,
How is the flavor
Part
of
of me,
racism different in Canada than the US, do you think?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that question up because I'm curious to know as well.
that's
Yes.
a great question, Chandra. I mean, there's polite racism. It's a lot more polite than it is
Covert. Yeah.
in the US, right? It's covert, it's polite, there's more microaggressions and marginalization, and no one's gonna call you out the N-word to your face. No one's gonna run around with a Confederate flag, right? Um, but I've driven past towns and states in the United States where, there's a Confederate flag on somebody's front porch, right? You're not going to see that overt type of racism here. So the flavor is a lot friendlier,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes and oftentimes just as damaging, just as painful. But then you do have your white nationalist and your extremists who felt emboldened enough to be Trump supporting on our main road, right? So
Right.
there are, of course, there's always going to be your overt racists.
Mm-hmm.
But for the large part, the large majority would pretend to not be racist. The large majority would pretend to be quote unquote tolerant, right? You're
Sure.
tolerating the the
Do
minorities,
you
right?
do
We
you
are,
experience a liberal hypocrisy in Canada the way that I experience it here? Because I like to acknowledge hypocrisy wherever I see it, even if it comes from the party that I affiliate myself with. So
yeah.
sometimes, regardless of political affiliation, and even, I mean, racism very often is manifested in the unintentional acts that we do as white people commit.
Mhm.
And so that's why Robin DiAngelo talks about, being a nice white person just isn't enough. And so I'm curious about your upbringing. I'm curious about your childhood a little bit, if you could tell, to the extent that you're comfortable telling us a little bit about your upbringing and how you came to be
Sure,
interested
sure,
in
sure.
this line of work.
So my upbringing, my family they're immigrants to Canada, and both my parents are working class individuals. They've always been. My father's retiring this month. My mother's retired a few years back, and they were just blue collar folks who believed that we should work twice as hard as everybody else in order to achieve, right? And so yeah, they came here with a dream, and they met each other and they fell in love, and then they had my sister and I, and tried to give us, I guess, as much as they possibly could. And so I had, like, the piano lessons and the ballet lessons and the quote unquote, things that the white society should have, or that we should think that we should have, in order to be accepted.
Do you think
And
a child of immigrants story that's repeated across many cultures of immigrants, that
I would
parents
say
go
so.
into overdrive trying to provide that which they did not have themselves growing up?
I would say that is absolutely the case. I think, to a large, I mean, my parents are from the Caribbean, from the West Indies, and so a lot of their values are colonial values, right? It stems um, from the old British systems and ways of thinking. So a lot of that is ingrained and brought with them, right? But a lot of it just stems from the quote unquote American dream kind of being infused into
Mm,
thinking, even all across North America, right? It's just you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you work hard, and you can have whatever the dream is that you envision for yourself and for your family. So um, my family very much believed, in that. My father, I would say, is quite brilliant. Um, and would spend time helping me with my homework, and it was really, like, academics was really pushed on me. But again, I'm the firstborn in the family. I'm the eldest.
oh
My
yeah,
sister didn't have that pressure, right? She could
right.
be silly and funny and creative, and I had to be academically focused. And so, because I had to be the model, and your sister's watching you and she's following your lead.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was told, you're going to university. In Canada, college and university is quite different. Colleges are for, like, applied learning, more technical professions. And so it was never a thought that I was never going to college. I was going to university, and that was it. Um, and so I went, right? And so I was going to become a professional. My mother aspired that I was going to become a doctor. And I actually, at one point, I wanted of course, you want to do what your parents want you to do. So I wanted to be a doctor. And then I changed along the way, and I'm still a Juris Doctor, right? Like, so these are things that, are part and parcel of who I am, and what makes me who I am, and why I'm justice minded is just my personal experiences. Watching my family struggle. They're both, again, people from the Caribbean with accents, and so I see the treatment. My mother spent a large bulk of her career on the phone and providing customer service, as an analyst to at the landlord and tenant board, or whatever it was called at the time, rent control, rent review, but largely providing support to individuals having landlord and tenant
Mm,
issues with their housing. And she would get abused on the phone and come home and talk about it, right? The person
mm,
who's just, give me your manager. I can't understand what you're saying, but she's speaking the Queen's English, and they put the phone down, right? They're just people who were a lot less tolerant in those days, the early 80s or whatever, um, than they are or would be now. Or I think now people would probably strain a little bit more to try to understand the accent that's different from their own. And Um, at least I would hope so.
One would
But yeah,
hope.
those are the
Yeah.
experiences. Yeah, those are the experiences that they, would come home and hear about, that would let you know that, there's injustice in the world, right? My mother was experiencing a form of injustice that was, an unfair treatment. She was being thought of as, different than or less than because of where she came from. And so that kind of course, is rooted in who I am. And then, of course, my own experiences. Like I always tell the story about my first experience of discrimination and harassment coming at 4 years old, standing for the school bus, waiting, with a group of other children and playing. Parents nearby, there's a conversation that emerges about, where is everybody from? And all the kids are sharing where they're from and their stories, and goes around the circle, and everyone, oh, I'm from Canada, or I'm from Yugoslavia, or I'm from this place, I'm from that place. But the large bulk were little Canadian kids, and it came to me and it's like, I'm from Canada. And I was told matter of factly, right? Like emphatically, actually, repeatedly, no, Janelle, no, Janelle, you're not from Canada, you're from Black land. And it was a little a Filipino girl who did that, right? So it's another
Blackland.
racialized individual. Yes, I was
Blackland was
from Black.
as if
At four
there's
years
such
old,
a place. Right? Yeah.
right?
Wow.
But of course, I didn't know better. But it was just this alarming, jarring moment where I run to my mother, and it's like, have you been lying to me all along? Am I from this mythological place called Blackland? What have you been telling me? I thought I was Canadian. And she says, you go back and you tell that little girl that you're from Canada, just like she is. Blah blah blah. My mom is very very strong and strong personality, and I had to go back and correct that little girl. And of course, that wasn't my persona at all. And I internalized that, and I remember that. I remember the moment in which I was othered in my own
Mm.
country, right, by another racialized individual. And my experiences of discrimination, harassment, and marginalization have not always been at the hands of white people, right? So, racialized people, we do it to each other. We feign superiority over other groups,
Mm.
and so that was, I mean, clearly this 4-year-old girl, somebody imparted that to her, that Black people were from somewhere else. She didn't learn that on her own. And so those are the types of things that need to be undone with our own children in the next cohort, so that,
Sure.
those
Speaking of
experiences don't
that,
occur.
how are those conversations with your own children around the dinner table? Obviously, we have to have, age appropriate conversations with our children. The kind of conversations I would have as a white mother, white sons, for example, would be different, perhaps. Some conversations would be similar, I would hope. The introduction of, basic concepts, racism 101, systemic racism 101, how that works. But it is no doubt challenging when there is other messaging also happening. My sons are seeing examples of white boys and men in the world who are, misbehaving in any number of ways and creating and harming people in any number of ways. And so there's a certain level of shame that I think that they may carry with them, just as a result of seeing themselves represented in that way. Uh, and so I try to educate at the same time, help them understand that shame is not productive and it's not, uh, their fault that they were born what they were born as, but to understand, how that impacts their experience in the world. But even, I deal with some white fragility from my own children around it, but they're adolescents and they don't fully understand or appreciate, yet these issues. And so I have to be very delicate because I don't want to push them away from the topic either. If they're not ready to talk about it a certain way, or it's incumbent upon me to give them some space and have the conversation maybe at a better time when they're more willing to listen. But I even being who I am, I struggle with how to introduce these concepts to my children, though I am doing so. I always second guess myself about whether I'm doing it in the right way. Am I, creating some type of insecurity or something that might make it hard later on for them to, take this up in whatever capacity they might, if they choose to do so. And then also understanding that as a mother, and this has been very humbling for me, is to realize that I'm a vessel. I don't necessarily
Mhm.
get to impose my worldview even onto my own children. Though
Yeah.
I hope and pray that the values that I've attempted to instill in them do surface, and that they grow into themselves and their awareness of the world and how they fit in. But I don't necessarily have any guarantee as to whether this is something that they will take up. And so, there's a little bit of letting go, right? That has to happen. Um, but how are the conversations around your dinner table?
So it's great that you asked me that because I struggle with this very much. Um, I'm very much a social justice advocate and a feminist and an anti-racist and um, like I'm a champion of human rights, just bottom line. And so I want my son to be open to different perspectives and to different ways of living and understanding of different cultures and races and identities and open to trying new foods and like everything that comes with that, right? And so I try my best to expose him through the books that we read and the shows that we watch, or we have conversations um, about what's happening in the world. So he didn't see all the craziness that happened the other day with the Proud Boys running through the Capitol, but he didn't see George Floyd, but he was aware, and he has been aware that police are hurting Black men because he is a Black boy, and I'm preparing him to become a Black man. He is also aware, and this was quite accidental. He saw the video of Amy Cooper, and he laughs hysterically about it. He thinks it's the most comical thing because he mocks her. He
Mm,
mocks the woman on the video, and
very
he puts
appropriately so.
he puts this shrill in his voice, and I'm gonna call the police. Like he totally thinks it's a joke. And I do have to laugh when he does that because, of course, what she did was, it was horrific. But at the other side of that is, she did make a fool of herself, right? Which is quite funny. And so our conversations, we read a book called F is for Feminism, right? Where, there's pictures for children that we can understand what E is for equality and J is for justice. And there's all this, it takes them through the alphabet about all of these terms. And so we have conversations. We talk about, Rosa Parks. We read a book about Rosa Parks and Maya Angelou and about the discrimination and the challenges that they faced. And I started to do those things even before he reached kindergarten because I just knew I didn't want him to have that school bus experience that I had, where somebody others me and tells me that I don't belong. And so I was preparing him in a sense for what I knew ultimately would be someone's going to call him out of his name. Someone's going to call him the N-word. Someone's going to tell him that, your skin is black, and he's going to, have this aha moment. So from very, very small, maybe even two, when my son would, say that, "Oh, he's brown." I was like, no, you're black. But mommy, no, my skin is brown. It's like, yes, your skin might be brown, but you are a Black boy. Like I was really almost like militant, like you're black and don't tell me about your brown. I don't want to hear it. Right. Little things he says. We'll be watching a show or a movie or whatever, and I try to create balance, right? So he loves superheroes, of course, Spider-Man and this and that. But we watch is it Batgirl? I forget which one. There's like Ant Boy, and there's this and that. We watched Wonder Woman. We
Uh-huh.
watched all of, I think, Supergirl or whatever. And now he says girl power. Like he sees girl power on television. He calls me, "Mommy, is that girl power?" I said, "Oh, that's absolutely girl power." So we talk about, when girls are kicking ass, or um, we talk about, what's happening and why police officers might not necessarily be doing the right thing and why they treat us differently. Um, so much so that I think I probably need to pull back a little bit because all his friends are diverse. He goes to a school that's uh, very mixed,
Hmm.
and one of his best friends is white, right? And they play and they love each other and they're just like the best of friends, right? But he said something problematic the other day about white people, and he's like, "Oh, well, I shouldn't do that because they're white, right, mommy?" And I was like, "No, no, no. Where did you hear that?"
No.
Yeah, like, he's going a little
Wrong.
further with it. It's like, no, 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 it's okay. Like, don't say that, right? Like, so I have to I guess counteract and balance what it is that I'm teaching him. You know, even when shows come across television now where there's two men kissing or holding hands or what have you, I don't turn the channel, right? I'm just like secretly like looking like, is he gonna look? Is he gonna question? Is he gonna ask? And I want him to, right? But so far, nothing. So he hasn't really noticed, even though when we were quite small, he had, you know, little play dates with, we had play dates with a gay couple who had who had adopted a little boy. And, you know, he's grown up seeing that. But now that he's 7, I want him to just, you know, ask a question or say, you know, just the, ew, the boys are kissing, like, so that we can have the conversation. But we haven't gone there yet. So I have open conversations with my son about different groups. But again, it's sort of, some of it's self-directed, some of it's me, you know, doing it through a book or a movie or whatever. We talk about feminism, we talk about race, you know, gender, all of that, because I do want him to, like you said, you want to impart your wisdoms and have them attach in some meaningful way. Luckily, thankfully, you know, he hasn't had the experience where, you know, somebody's called him the N-word or whatever. But I've already prepared him. Like, this is a word, you shouldn't even know what it is, but if you hear it, this is what you do, right? So he's prepared for all of those scenarios. And it's sad. I felt ridiculous having to have that conversation. Here's a word that you shouldn't know in 2020, but just in case you hear it, you know, this is what it sounds like. I felt absolutely ridiculous, but at the same time, I didn't want to leave my son unaware or confused or not knowing what to do, because ultimately I do know that moment is coming, whether it's overt or whether it is, you know, the covert, the marginalization and the pushing down and the suppressing of his ideas or thoughts, through the school system, right? Systemic racism in the school system. I definitely want him to know that how to advocate for himself and to counteract those experiences.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I had a couple proud mom moments. I suppose the first one, actually, I would call it the introduction of my oldest son's, you know, awareness of systemic racism. He was in a magnet program in a predominantly Black school on the Black side of town, but very segregated from the, you know, mainstream student population.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, yeah, he doesn't remember it even as well as I do, but you know, as a mom, these moments stick with you. And he came home very upset that a Black boy who was not in his program, and he was again very aware of his, you know, being separated from the mainstream population of the school, and he observed, in this case, actually a Black resource officer. So in Florida, we have school resource officers who are, in fact, police officers. It's a very, sometimes I feel like it's a police state in the schools here in Florida.
Yeah.
And so they're heavily armed, and, you know, but in this particular case, it was a Black boy who's pushed up against a fence very violently by a Black school resource officer, you know, criminalized from an early age. And I'm sure it wasn't the first time that he experienced that. And so my son came home very upset that he had witnessed that. And I don't remember all the particulars of the conversation we had, but I did, you know, let him know that, you know, that wasn't likely going to be something that was going to happen to him, so that he would feel safer, but also be aware that his skin color does afford him privileges. And so there was that moment, and then there was a moment my younger son had on the school bus where he defended a friend of his who was Black. And you know, they do these things, these actions that sometimes are even more than what I expect, and I'm pleased at that. I suppose we need to continue to have conversations all the way through into adulthood. There are, you know, age appropriate topics that come along. I think, I'd like for my son to watch 13th Amendment. I think he's heading in towards being 17. He's ready for that kind of content. So as things progress, I hope that but I actually think that not my teaching them is not really the thing that stuck, to be honest. I think what stuck was having their social media lit up by Black people, particularly with my son who loves sports, Black athletes, also activists speaking out. And for him to hear it, from the people who live it is much more powerful. I'm pleased that he's getting that kind of an education via social media. I know that he is. He's mentioned that, he's that's showing up on his feed. So perhaps I don't necessarily need to be the one, all the time. I think as long as he stays, plugged in that way, he'll hear from the people that live it, and that's what he needs to hear. So yeah, these are interesting times. What do you hope your 2021 shapes up to be like? What do you hope to accomplish this year?
Oh, so many things, Chandra. Of course, I want to be able to make a dent in some workplaces, to make some improvements systemically, to change things for people that are within those walls. So I want to work with organizations really to change and transform like their policies and practices, and do some education and training to break not only the systemic barriers but the attitudinal barriers as well. So I'm also hoping to create a lot more content and workshops and trainings and writing a book even, and putting myself out there in a different way than I have previously. So just more of that, and less
Any
moving
idea what
full.
the book would it be around diversity and inclusion, or would it be
Yeah,
something?
I'm working on it right now. I'm working on it right now, and I'm hoping to put something out for Black History Month, at the start of Black History Month. But it's only like 17 days away. It'll be a very short pocket book. I don't want to say much more than that before someone co-ops my idea and then put something out similarly. But
Yeah.
if with any success, I will have something ready and to go to market sometime in February. I don't want to commit myself to the first, but
Yeah.
I'm preparing something that would add to the anti-racism space and conversation, and anti-Black racism conversation in time for Black History Month. That's what I'm hoping.
What do you think we white people need to be hearing right now at this particular moment in history?
I
Oh my
knew you would.
goodness.
She's so bold. I love it. I love it. I love it.
What do
Bring it.
you need to be what do you need to be hearing? You need to be hearing that you need to support, of course, Black voices, Black people. And that's everywhere that you find them. And if you can't find them in your community or in your environment, seek them out. They're around. And that's an issue, right? So, change your change who your friends are, change your circle, change your social circle, change your work location, or your work environment to include racialized people, um, and support them, support their voices, amplify their voices, and recognize their skills and their qualifications. Stop marginalizing us, stop oppressing us. um, there's so much that we could contribute if we weren't held back, right? So it's just giving us that room to move and to flourish and to grow, because we have been oppressed and held back and held down for such a long time. And we haven't made the gains economically that we need to. um, and so we definitely need a boost. We need that support. And so support organizations that are Black led, Black owned. They're all over the place. Find a Black real estate agent. Find a Black place to do your hair. Find whatever it is that you enjoy doing. If you enjoy your morning coffee, find a Black coffee shop. If you enjoy shopping online, find an online supplier that is Black or racialized. because without that, we're never going to make the type of economic gains that are necessary to change the landscape and our economic picture. And in just, they say by 2045, white people will be the quote unquote minority group in the United States. And so for your American viewers, that means definitely doing things that are going to support the economic advancement of these communities. Otherwise, your country is going to be in the tank, right? If you continually refuse to support with your dollars, the Black community and the brown community, the country is going to falter. It's just what it is.
Who inspires you? Whether it be a
You know what?
historical person or someone current, who inspires
My
you?
mom is my biggest inspiration. I should tell her so, but she is my biggest inspiration. She is, the strongest, bravest woman that I know, that, still cooks her butt off at Christmas time and puts, everything on the table. She's done her part to be a provider, and in every way, right? In every single way. She's my backbone. She's my supporter. She's anything that I'm going through, it's like my mom is there. She's my champion. So she definitely inspires me more than anybody else.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. What would you say? Let's see, this is for Stevie. I'm just curious. Any advice for someone like Stevie who's wanting to go into DEI as a profession? How he can help, how he can develop himself further in that way and maybe one day have a business of his own, like you.
Yes, definitely.
Sure. So I would say, Stevie, without knowing you or your background, I would say if you have the passion for the work, there's definitely certificate programs that you can get right now to complement, what it might be your lived experience that's bringing to the table. If it is that you don't have the quote unquote qualifications for it, like personally, I have a law degree, which I totally love. I think it's
Very
a really
prestigious.
versatile.
Yes.
It's prestigious. Forget that. It's for
It's
me. That's like
prestigious. No, that is definitely
it's,
prestigious. We're not going to
He's from
dispute.
Mississippi. He's just trying to be a
No,
very polite
what
gentleman.
what I value about it is the lens it gives me, the ability to think critically, and it's a flexible degree that I can apply in so many different situations. It lends to my itself to my justice mindedness. And so I appreciate that when I go into an organization and I'm looking at their policies and their practices, and I'm reviewing even legislative requirements in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like in Canada, we have federal anti racism legislation, right? I can apply that legislation to the organization in a systematic way where somebody else wouldn't have the skills or qualifications to do it. So, if you can go to law school, I would certainly say you'll
no,
never regret that decision. But there's also other certificate programs that are popping up that you can take even right now online, in diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are phenomenal programs. So just seek one out, make sure it's accredited, that you're going to get some sort of certificate at the end of the day, and that organizations appreciate and value it. I also have a process improvement or process management training. So, I understand root cause analysis, and I understand, current state of an organization and how to transform it and take it to, a future state in, again, a systematic way. So take a process management or process improvement certificate for those who are listening or watching. Um, Definitely do things that are going to increase your cultural competence, right? There's facilitation training that you can take that I've recently taken as well to improve my cultural competence and my ability to facilitate conversations um, that need to happen at the senior leadership level and with employees as well, to get again at the root cause of certain workplace issues and contentious environments. And so there's all kinds of cultural competence programs and facilitation training that you can take, negotiation skills and mediation skills, conflict resolution skills, anything that would do like alternative dispute resolution. I took that in law school as well. So if you
Yeah, I
can
took that from
get
my
trained in
MBA.
ADR, yeah, ADR, mediation, conflict resolution, all of that, those skills will certainly be useful. Um, just because you're gonna go into a workplace and you don't
Right.
know what you're gonna meet until you meet it. You're right. Senior leadership is gonna think, you know, oh, everybody here they're complaining about this. They all want a pay raise, but you're gonna get into the organization and you're gonna hear from the staff and they're gonna say, we don't want a pay raise. Our pay is great. We're complaining about that. And so just to have the ability to draw that out of people, to get at really what the issues or problems are within an organization, will be vital. It's an important skill. So do that. And then, if you can work in policy or government to understand, programmatic changes, policy changes, how to develop a policy from start to finish, all of those things, are kind of part of my core and foundation. I've worked in government and policy development for such a long time that I do understand how to take a policy, create it, and have it approved, and also review it, change it, ensure that the language is as inclusive as it needs to be. All of those things are really important. So you can figure out a million ways to get at this work. I mean, people are criticizing DEI professionals because there isn't that one, standard for education. But I don't think it's necessary. I think people can come at this work from so many different angles or vantage points. So just figure out what it is that you bring. My branding expert would say, what's your unique value, right?
Oh, I know
Nobody's
what
going
it
to
is.
be.
She already
What
knows.
is it? Tell us.
Well, I'm
Tell us.
secretly plotting for Stevie with his chemistry background to take over the STEM world and blow it up with the DEI.
No.
Because STEM
There
really
you
has a diversity problem, as we know. And I think someone who has a science background like he does is in really great position to at least understand something a little bit about the culture around STEM and in the sciences that has, not been the most welcoming place for women and people of color. So that's
Yeah, I
that's
think
my hope, is that he takes that on, but he will decide for himself, of course.
the biggest thing I could share is don't shy away from what it is that you bring to the space, what your unique value and contribution could be. Just bring that, and don't wait. Like, seriously, get in. If you want to do this work and you have a passion for it, just start. There's nothing holding you back from just resting on your lived experience and your ideas for how you can contribute, and then going for it. Because we need everybody working simultaneously in order to change what's happening in our society. Like, every single person has a role to play.
Yep. So a little
Stevie,
bit.
I didn't want to monopolize the conversation. Did you want to?
No, go ahead for it.
No, I wanted you to.
That's a really good point, though. It kind of made me think on a deeper level. For me, I'm more of a recruiting guru. So for me, I'm more about fixing the broken recruitment strategy, because in recruitment, that's where diversity and inclusion starts. With creating job descriptions that are inclusive and creating diverse pool candidates for people, and shying away from recruiters and their explicit biases. So that's more of the line of work that I do pretty much. And I've kind of just been finding my way, reading more articles and getting deeper involved. And considering the fact that I am from one of the most racist openly states in the United States, which is Mississippi, and being Black, and I've never experienced racism. Never, ever in my 28 years of living, I've never experienced racism. I've never had the N-word dropped on me. I've never had anything that pertains to racist activities in the state of Mississippi that have been dropped on me. But I've seen people and been in situations where, they were faced with it. But for me, it was quite different. So, I use that as the experience to leverage my way through, but also stop it as well. Stop other people from experiencing it. So you put a lot of good pointers in my head when it comes to implementing policies and things like that. So I've decided to enroll myself in Harvard University in their diversity and inclusion training program as well. So but you just really took the thinking process to a whole nother level. So I get it.
When I heard that he had not experienced racism in the state of Mississippi, I wanted to jump for joy. I also realized that as a white person it was important that I not project anything onto any particular Black person's experience. And so but it was surprising to me because, of course, I'd lived in the South, I'd studied the racist history of the South, and yet it was something to be celebrated that someone could grow up in Mississippi and not experience that, at the same time not deny that others experience that.
Mhm.
So
I grew up around white people predominantly. So,
but at least they were not white people who caused harm.
no.
And that could be, some people grow up around white people and do experience it. So it's important, I guess, to also recognize, as a white person, of course, to acknowledge that no people are a monolith. No people are. We come in all varieties, and so that was the idea for the podcast, was to have a variety of experiences represented. So thank you, Janelle, for coming on today and
Yeah, like
sharing your experience with us.
you shared a lot of information that the whole time you were talking, I'm literally sitting over here just thinking, and actually, I'm over here jotting down notes. So, which is the first time I've ever done that on a podcast, because I'm blown away by your accomplishments, your expertise. You are you are a bright light. You know that. Very radiant, very intelligent,
so
strong.
much, Phoebe. And honestly, write this down. You should take labor relations as well. Like labor relations, I think
I
could
hated
certainly
that
help
class in
you.
my MBA program.
Oh,
That is very important. Like all of that resolution dispute. Like I took all of those classes, so it's like I've been in HR for a while now. So that's
okay.
what I started off as an HR coordinator, and I started off working in the aerospace engineering industry, which is dominated by white supremacy. So, but even in those environments, I've never experienced racism or discrimination. At least I don't think. But I've seen it from other people.
These are important skills, right? To be able to understand and assess collective agreements and bargaining, and understanding, like you said, what is happening in the recruitment life cycle, from human resources, from like promotion, opportunities for advancement, all of that. Like it's all part and parcel of what labor relations is about. Right?
And like I tell Chandra all the time, a company hiring a bunch of Black people does not make your company equitable or anti-racist, because all you have to do is just ask for the salary data. That's all you have to do, and it's gonna show.
But not only that, I mean, you could bring, and I say this to organizations all the time. You can increase the representation of different historically marginalized groups in your workplace, and then just have more people complaining about the problems and the fact that they're not being treated well. If you don't create the foundations and the environment for inclusion before bringing different groups on, you're just adding to the problem. You're potentially causing more harm to more people that you've just brought into your toxic work environment. So fix your toxicity first, and then try to increase.
You have to fire your racists, fire your homophobics, fire your transphobics, transphobias. Yep. You have to fire all of them. You have to get to the root of the problem, because one apple can spoil the rest. They have to go at some point.
Absolutely.
You have to get rid of them.
I'm glad we're seeing some accountability for the people who decided that they were going to hold an insurrection at the Capitol. And
is it enough?
All of a sudden, white people are coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, that's, having them lose their jobs has gone too far. That's gone too far. And it's just amazing the passes that get given when it's on the other side, right? And of course, we saw that with the disparity in the response to Black Lives Matter protests versus, what was going on at the Capitol. It's quite apparent that there's a clear double standard. And so I hope that we continue to see accountability for people who harm others, whether it's inside the workplace or outside, but we need to see that accountability. I was a little bit surprised that the gentleman, the bird watcher, didn't hold Amy to account ultimately. I thought that was kind of an interesting outcome to that case. I would have liked to see her be held to account for that, which could have resulted in something far worse than it did. So at least
I know. Thankfully that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciated being here.
We loved having you. Yeah. And we look forward to having you again and checking in with you, seeing how your 2021 is shaping up, how the business is going, and anything that comes down the pipeline. This should be an interesting year for for all of us in a variety of ways. So we
Yep.
look forward to checking back in with you.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
Have a
again.
wonderful afternoon.
All
You
right.
too. Thank you, guys. I appreciate this.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.